Today is a big news day. We got three things to cover. First, we got some stuff on the F150. It looks like there's going to be a hybrid powertrain version coming, so I've got some news on that. Second, I've got some interior shots, which I think I'm the only one that has these right now. There's also some other interior shots that are really clear too. And third, I've got some news on the Bronco. I've got some new interior stuff that just dropped and also some possible powertrain news. So let's get into it. My name is Eric. I cover future cars and trucks. If that's interesting to you, please consider subscribing. There's also a Discord chat link down below too. First, we're going to talk about the F150. So Motor One has got some spy shots. They're also on some other websites too. Definitely go check out Motor One if you're interested in F150 news. They're a very good source for that. So just a quick recap with the F150. I think we're expecting to see evolutionary changes as opposed to something revolutionary. They've been rolling around a couple of, I wouldn't even call them mules. These are actually almost production vehicles. They're probably production prototypes. They're rolling around with almost no camo at all. There's no body cladding on these. There's no foam. This looks to be just a little bit of wrap on these vehicles. We haven't seen this particular vehicle before, but this appears to be the Super Crew version of the F-150. As you probably know, if you're familiar with it, there are three versions of the cabin that you can get. The Super Crew is the biggest one. It has got 4 doors and it's got a full, back seat, so it can seat the most people. We talked about this in the last video, but there does seem to be some styling updates for the F-150 on the exterior at least. The taillights are different and the front grille is different, and so are the lights. I've got a link to that video up here. It's also down below if you want to check that out. Motor One believes that this is a hybrid version. Now there's a reason for that. We believe it to be a hybrid because this vehicle rolled into Ford's hybrid and EV development center after he took these photos. So that's a pretty good clue that we are most likely looking at a hybrid here. I've been looking at these photos pretty closely, and there are two main types of hybrids that are going to be available on this vehicle, according to the rumors. Back in 2014, Ford told us they would be developing hybrid technology for their trucks. So here we are. It's coming out as a 2021 model. We're talking about 7 years later. This looks like it's going to hit the streets. But there's two basic types of hybrids. There's a plug-in hybrid, and then there is a conventional hybrid, I'm going to call it. Now, I looked around on the spy photos for ports, flaps that you could open up to plug in overnight, and I didn't see anything like that. So my guess is that this is the conventional hybrid. Now, of course, something that we didn't see is the other side of the truck, so it's still a possibility that this is a plug-in hybrid. It's just a little bit early to say. We don't really know that much yet. Now, knowing that this is probably a hybrid vehicle, if you look at the front of the truck, below the bumper, there is this opening. And I don't exactly know what that is. So let me know down below in the comments what you think this opening is for. We saw another opening on a previous test vehicle that was rolling around too. I commented that, or some people commented in the last video. I'm also not too sure exactly what that is. Now, all hybrids have a battery and at least one electric motor. And obviously in the Prius, this is optimized for fuel economy. It's designed for range, designed to get the most economy that you can possibly get. There's another style of hybrid, which is sometimes called a mild hybrid. The Acura NSX used this, and they used it for performance purposes. Now in the NSX, it has a relatively small battery, but in order to improve acceleration, they use a technique called torque fill. So essentially the electric motor is able to provide a lot of instantaneous torque from no RPMs, and as you're waiting for the turbo to spool up in a vehicle, that electric motor essentially assists in acceleration that can provide a lot of torque. The current generation F-150 is getting a little bit long in the tooth, and it's pretty exciting to see these hybrid options that are finally becoming available. It's a very big deal for hybrid trucks to be hitting the market, and Ford is being pretty aggressive with their approach to electrification and hybrids. We got the Mustang Mach-E, for example, and now we're looking at hybrid F-150s. Again, it's an option. The F-150 has always had a lot of powertrain options. I suspect they're going to keep that. So for the people that want a hybrid, it's a pretty good option to have. Now in a truck, you're obviously able to carry a pretty big battery relative to a car. When you think about, I'm going to go back to the Prius for a second, you think about that, it's a fairly small chassis. You've got the F-150, it's a full-size truck. You can fit a fairly big battery in there. So I think there are a number of ways that they can approach this hybridization of the vehicle. They can make it more fuel efficient, and I think that's definitely a strong possibility, perhaps for some of the more entry-level models. And then you can also create the hybrid to generate additional torque and power when you need it too. I'm not exactly sure where Ford is going to go with this. Perhaps there will be a couple of versions of the hybrid. If they have a plug-in version, which I think is very likely, that is more likely in that scenario to be more for range. If you've got a more conventional style hybrid, I think that's more likely to be for power. So it's pretty interesting to see what Ford is going to be doing with this. Now this is pure speculation on my part, but I'm looking at this hybrid truck and we can see one exhaust pipe coming out the back. Now that in and of itself doesn't mean that much, but I'm thinking that one of the powertrain options might be the 2.3 liter EcoBoost engine, which of course is used in the Ford Ranger, and it's also used in the Mustang. It makes various levels of power depending on if it's in the Ranger or the Mustang. In the Mustang, it makes 310 horsepower and 350 pounds-feet of torque. In the Ranger, it makes 270 horsepower and 310 pounds-feet of torque. So this is just pure speculation on my part. What if Ford made it the 2.3 liter EcoBoost with a battery and electric motors? That could be kind of interesting. It could be a fairly torquey setup. So again, it's pure speculation on my part, but I was just seeing the one exhaust pipe. Take that as you will. There are some other powertrain rumors too. Right now you have the 5-liter V8 that is available in the F-150. It also powers the Mustang. It's called the Voodoo in the Mustang. There's some differences to the engine. The rumor is that this engine might be moving on and it might be replaced with a 4.8-liter V8. Now presumably if they do that, it's going to be for efficiency reasons, and probably they're able to squeeze a little bit more torque and power out of it too. Engine technology is always advancing, so we'll have to see what that is. There isn't a lot of information on this potential 4.8 liter. And by the way, if you do have information on the F-150 or the Bronco, feel free to hit me up on Instagram. I'm pretty accessible there. You can also email me as well too. The email is linked on YouTube. Now, if you do decide to contact me, remember it's going to be completely anonymous. I'm not going to reveal you. I'm not going to reveal my sources. Now, here's the second thing that I promised. I found some spy photos that appear to be a little bit cleaner than the ones that I posted a couple days ago. Here they are. I found them on Instagram. I'm going to link the user down here below too. I don't have them in my script, sorry, user, but thank you very much for those. We're seeing what looks to be a very large display. I know in my last video I said it might be 8 inches. I think actually some of the people who commented are correct. It's probably in the range of 10 inches. We do have a fully digital dash. You can see it a little bit more clearly here. We've got the heating and ventilation controls and the radio, the infotainment center controls pretty clearly here in this photo too. Very similar layout to the current F-150. They're not going to change it that much because it's a very successful truck. Obviously, it's the best-selling truck in North America. And we are seeing a classic console. The shifter is a very classic lever. They're not doing any of the Ranger type style where you have the dial or any of that nonsense. I don't like that. I think it's good to keep the classic shifter. I think it's important. Now the dash is going to be fully digital, and that means it's probably going to be configurable as well. So it's a little bit shaky, so it's a bit hard to tell what's going on here, but way over on the left, we've got a check engine light, and we've got the tach. And then up on top, we've got what looks to be 4 gauges. I think we have water temperature on the left. We have oil temperature next to that. The one next to that, I'm not entirely sure what that is. And then it looks like something like fuel range. And then below that, we've got a trip meter and MPGs, time, miles, and distance to empty, I think. And then there's something called privacy down there. I really don't know what that is exactly. On the right, you've got your speedometer. So looks to be a pretty big, clear, readable dashboard. This is the way the industry is moving. I think it's pretty good. Okay, now let's get into the Bronco updates that I promised to you. So this is sort of hot off the presses. There is some interesting developments with respect to the engine. So CarBuzz is reporting that the engine that's going to be available is the 2.7 liter V6 twin turbo EcoBoost, which in other Ford configurations makes 325 horsepower and 400 pounds-feet of torque. Now, it's not entirely clear if this is the only engine that is going to be used in the Bronco. Previously, there have been a lot of rumors that it is going to get the 2.3 liter EcoBoost, which we already talked about in this video. I still think that is a pretty strong possibility. So CarBuzz is sort of speculating that perhaps the 2.7 liter, the V6 is going to be the only engine available. I find that a little bit incredible, and here's why. The Jeep Wrangler has a fairly large number of powertrain configurations available at this point, and we know that Ford wants to go directly head-to-head with the Wrangler. Now personally, again, this is just speculation, I think that the 2.3 liter EcoBoost makes a lot of sense for the entry-level version of this vehicle. The Jeep starts at the Wrangler at around $30,000. My guess is that Ford is going to position the Bronco to be similarly priced, perhaps a couple dollars higher, and I expect it will go up to be significantly more expensive than the current highest level Wrangler. Just for a second, let's take a look at the Jeep powertrain options that Ford would apparently be competing with. So Wrangler now has a couple of engine choices, including a mild hybrid. They also have a manual transmission and an 8-speed automatic. There's no real word on the Bronco getting a manual transmission. I think it's a possibility because of Jeep, although who knows? My guess is that if they do make it available, it won't be right at the beginning. I think it'll be a little bit later in the run, just because the vast majority of people are probably going to opt for the automatic transmission. Now in the Jeep, you got an 8-speed automatic. Oh, and in terms of powertrain for the Bronco, there is another rumor that the V8 might be coming in a Bronco Raptor. I'm not too positive on that. I think the EcoBoost, the V6 EcoBoost, might be a more likely scenario because they can get a lot more power out of that engine, and it's probably going to be lighter than the V8. Now also on the Wrangler, you can get a 3-liter EcoDiesel V6, 260 horsepower and 442 pounds-feet of torque. That's a lot of torque. You can get just the straight 2-liter, and then you can also get the eTorque hybrid system with the V6. So in the Jeep configuration, this is a fairly new entry for them into the hybrid market. It's a mild hybrid, and what it does is it develops more torque and a little bit better fuel economy when paired with the 2-liter. So I don't know exactly what Ford is going to do, but they do have a lot of competition from Jeep. Jeep is selling about 923,000 units per year across their entire range. Mind you, those are 2019 numbers. Ford has said that they want to sell 200,000 Broncos in 2021. That's a pretty big number. That's actually a surprisingly big number. Very aggressive. I think Ford might be able to do it. Now, the last piece of the story comes from Automotive News. Apparently, Ford is planning to develop, or rather sell, up to 150 aftermarket pieces through Ford dealers at launch. With the Ranger, they didn't really have all the parts available at launch, so it was a little bit slow to sort of get that rolling. They want to rectify that now and have a lot of stuff available at launch. And why do they want to do this? Well, number one, Jeep has a very, very healthy aftermarket for accessories. You can buy all kinds of stuff. Ford wants a little bit of that pie, and before the aftermarket really gets a hold of the Bronco, Ford will have essentially an exclusive for months or maybe even up to a year as manufacturers sort of get ready with their parts. So it's a pretty smart move, I think, to have accessories available because they're super popular, and it's going to add to Ford's profitability, which is something that they need right now if you've been following the other news. Now, these photos just dropped a couple hours ago. Thank you, Bronco 6G, for finding these. These are some much clearer interior shots of the new Bronco. These are the best shots that we've seen yet. So we can see that there is a pretty big display on the dash that I think is probably about the same size as what we find in the F150. Now, what's also interesting is that above the display there is a row of gauges, secondary gauges, that are probably also LEDs. It's a little bit difficult to say what they are, but they're higher up on the dash, so I'm guessing these are sort of mission critical gauges. I think one of them is showing the drive mode that you're in, perhaps what four-wheel drive mode that you're in, if you're in 4 high or 4 low. A little bit difficult to see those. Now on the roof we've got 6 switches. I don't know exactly what these are. Presumably they could be for accessories, perhaps winch, lights, things like that. Let me know down below what you think they might be. Perhaps they're configurable, perhaps not, but that's pretty interesting to see. We can also see the vents are vertical, very much like the F150. And now right below the center display, I believe there are some heating and ventilation controls and also the media controls. This appears to be very, very similar to the F150. I have a source that tells me that the interior is very similar to the F150. In fact, probably a lot of it is identical. It's probably just pulled right from the F150. Another thing that is very similar to the F150 is the standard shifter in the middle. It's a classic floor-mounted shifter, and next to that is a knob. Now, I think, my guess is that this knob is for selecting your drive modes, 4 high, 4 low, 2-wheel drive, whatever the modes are going to be ultimately. That's what I think this is going to be. It's a little bit difficult to see, but that seems like a logical place to put it. If you're wondering what this red button on the dash is, some people have asked me that before. That's a pretty standard thing in test vehicles. It's a shut-off mechanism, so if there is something wrong with the vehicle, something electrical, this will basically just shut off the systems rapidly. And it looks like there's a pretty big piece in front of the rear view mirror. I'm thinking there might be a camera in there. Perhaps there's going to be some type of advanced camera system that maybe can, I don't know exactly, and certainly in some other vehicles you can recognize traffic signs, things like that, but it's pretty big there. Perhaps it's going to be used off-roading, calculating angle of attack. I don't know. Now, we still don't have a date on when the Bronco is actually going to be revealed. Looks like there could be a reveal in March for one of them and another one in April. I'm still waiting for confirmation, and the moment we hear something, I'm going to let you know. There's a couple videos up on screen right now. One of them is going to be on the Bronco. My name is Eric. If you like this content, please subscribe. I will see you in the next video.